Hello there, this is Sharon Sarago, and today we'll talk about misplaced modifying phrases. I'm afraid that this is going to be a fairly long lesson. I will try to hurry through it, and then you can come back and listen at it, listen to it as many times as you need to get what I so hastily went through. We're going to have a lot of questions that deal with misplaced participles on the SAT. And our first study is going to learn how to identify a participle in the first place, and then we'll go to the problem of using it in sentences. A participle is a verb form that's used as an adjective. It can end in ing, ed, n, or t. We have an example. I saw the singing bird. Singing is your participle. It is a verb form. It ends in ing, and it's used as an adjective modifying bird, and that makes it a participle. So we're going to see about trying to identify all the participles here. Just look for the rules. We were amazed at the rising prices. Here you've got a verb form, but it's functioning as an adjective modifying prices. It ends in ing. So we have one there. Trembling, of course, is a verb form. It ends in ing, but it functions as an adjective modifying dog. Then we have the whining animal. It looks like a verb. It ends in ing, but it functions as an adjective modifying animal. So I want you to go through the rest of these and just simply underline the participle there. Be sure that it's actually an adjective. That's what's going to make it a participle. Looks like a verb, but it's actually an adjective. A participial phrase then begins with your participle and has any modifiers or complements that go with it. And the whole phrase is an adjective. And you know that you can take adjectives out of the sentence. So you will be able to take the whole participial phrase out of the sentence too. Here's our example. The man talking to the woman in the red dress is the president of the association. Here's our basic sentence. The man is the president of the association. All of this, while it might be kind of interesting, is not really necessary. It's telling us about the man. The whole phrase is functioning as an adjective, telling us about man. So anytime that you're trying to find a participle or a participial phrase, you want to look for a word that looks like a verb that begins it. It usually ends in ing, but it can end in ed, n, or t, and it will be functioning as an adjective. One of the most important things about this whole study is for you to understand this. The participial phrase needs to sit next to the noun it modifies. If it does not, it will cause a problem. That's what I want you to learn. On this little exercise, we're going to underline the participial phrase, draw an arrow from the underlined phrase to the noun that it modifies, and then rewrite the sentence omitting the phrase. So you've got, I know the woman crossing the street. Crossing the street is your participial phrase. If you take that out, you would be left with, I know the woman. The point is, I want you to be sure to understand that these participial phrases can be taken out of the sentence. So your basic sentence is, I have read that book. Lying on the table is your participial phrase, and it modifies book. Notice that it sits next to it. Notice that this participial phrase sits next to the word that it modifies. That's a critical element. It has to sit next to the word that it modifies. So you can pause and go ahead and do this, or you can keep going with me. And our big thing now is to learn to begin sentences with participial phrases for two reasons. One, they're going to test you over the punctuation that you use in introductory participial phrases. And secondly, when you write your essay, even though it's not required on the new SAT, your colleges will more than likely ask for it. So when you write your essay, one of the things they grade you on is how you begin your sentences. If you start them all with a subject and a verb, they're going to count you down. They're looking for sophisticated structure, and starting sentences with participial phrases is one real good way to get it there. So we've got, the man walked toward the podium checking his notes for the last time. Remember that participial phrases simply do modify the nouns they sit next to, whether we like it or not. And therefore, this sentence is really saying that the podium was checking his notes. That's absurd, of course. So what we really want is to put this over here so that it modifies man. Now we've got checking his notes for the last time. The man walked toward the podium. This modifies the noun that it sits next to. Do you see that? That's so important. And notice also that when you start a sentence with a participial phrase, I don't care how many words it is, you must have a comma after it. All introductory participial phrases must be followed by a comma. What you're going to do now is to rewrite these sentences. Take the participial phrase. It doesn't modify charm, it modifies girl, so let's move it over there so that it's next to girl. And your sentence would say, seen in the spotlight, the girl radiated her charm. You have several of these to do. This one is very easy. You just are simply moving the participial phrase so that it actually sits next to the word that it modifies. Then we're going to combine sentences. Take two smaller sentences and make it into a better sentence, a more sophisticated sentence with a participial phrase. And of course, we're practicing putting those at the beginning of sentences. Remember that when you do that and you introduce your sentence with a participial phrase, you must follow it with a comma. I have two sentences here. The dog ran behind the car. He barked wildly. I can do it two ways. I can turn this verb into a participle and say barking wildly, the dog ran behind the car. Or I can take this verb and turn it into a participle. Running behind the car, the dog barked wildly. It doesn't make any difference how I do it. My participial phrase still modifies dog. My participial phrase still modifies dog. Be very, very cognizant of this. So you have several different sentences to write, and I'd like you to, if you have time, to write them both ways so that you get plenty of practice. You can't know how critical this is. As you've seen from these exercises, participial phrases sit next to the nouns they modify. When they don't, the sentence can be misunderstood, and it can become absolutely absurd in its meaning. Here's an example. I saw the accident looking out the window. Well, you are not being evaluated over what you know that the author intended. You're going to be evaluated over what's really right there in front of you. And this one says, looking out the window modifies accident. And therefore, the accident was looking out the window. You have to have this participial phrase sitting next to the word that you want to modify. So you can just simply move it and say, looking out the window, I saw the accident. Now your participial phrase actually modifies the correct word. Again, these are easy to fix. You're just simply moving the participial phrase so that it sits next to the word that it modifies. Now I'd like to show you some participial phrases, and what we're going to do is, again, move them if we can. But here, you see, it was not the bird that was reading the mail, it was Jerry. I love this one, the two dogs riding his bicycle. It says that the dogs are riding the bicycle. That's just not going to work for us, is it? Here you've got umbrellas surfing on the ocean waves, not David. Up to this point, we've been concerned only with participial phrases, but the same problem of misplacement can occur with prepositional phrases as well. Here's an example of a misplaced prepositional phrase. Like most new teenage drivers, the winding streets confused Callie for a few weeks. Well, here's your participial phrase, your prepositional phrase introducing the sentence, and it will modify the noun it sits next to, which is city streets. And teenage drivers are not going to be compared to streets. We probably need to compare them to Callie, but you have to rewrite the sentence. That is not going to work. And I want you to start looking for this, because this is precisely what they do on your test. Like most new teenager drivers, Callie was confused by the city's winding streets. All right, we're going to have some practice here. And you're going to see some underlined phrases. Here we've got the entire sentence underlined, and I want you to see which version works best for you. Here we have just a part of it. Find out which one of those is the best way to say that. Now we have another thing called dangling participles. It's an ominous sounding title, dangling participle. And yet you are very likely to find this error on your SAT. At least they say you're going to in the front of your book. They tell you they're going to test you over dangling participles. The reason that this is different from the misplaced participle is that it has nothing to modify. And that's why they say it dangles. Here's your example. Looking in the bottom of his closet, an old baseball mitt was found. We don't know who was looking in the bottom of the closet. According to this sentence, the mitt was looking in the bottom of the closet and apparently found itself, because participial phrases simply do modify the noun they sit next to, whether we like it or not. Also, you've had passive voice. Notice that this is in passive voice. An old baseball mitt was found. It lends itself to a mistake. So we could have said, looking in the bottom of the closet, Bob found his old baseball mitt, and then we know who was looking in the bottom of the closet, and we have active voice. You're going to find many constructions like this on the test, but your task is to find a better way to construct the sentence. Just be sure that you choose a sentence that allows the participial phrase to sit next to the noun that it really modifies, because if you don't, it's going to say something really funny. Here's an example. Advancing in the dark, the tree was fallen over. Well, according to this sentence, the tree was the one advancing in the dark. Again, it's in passive voice, so if you can rewrite that, you'll have a much better sentence. Sentences with dangling participles are almost always the result of using passive voice. So now that you know how to use active and passive voice, let's try avoiding that error. You must understand, I'm going to tell you once more, that you are not being evaluated upon your ability to interpret the author's intention. You're going to be evaluated on whether or not you understand the rules and applications of standard formal grammar. You have to be able to spot the errors. Well, we've got some practice with dangling participles here, and it will require a rewrite because you've got nothing in there to tell you who's doing those things. You won't have to do a lot, but you're going to have to put something in there so that they work. Now we're going to have a combination of misplaced and dangling modifiers. And I want you just simply to tell me whether the sentence is correct or incorrect. You should be able to recognize these now. I'm not asking you to fix them. More practice, more practice. Here's our test-taking practice that you are very familiar with now. And you know, after that is always going to come our passage-based testing. And this will all be on misplaced and dangling modifiers. So watch for them. And then you'll get your answers and check your answers. When you are creating your own sentences here, I can only give you ideas about them. They may not be precisely what the answer is that you got. For instance, here it says suggested answer. So if you're not clear about it or not sure, then mark the sentence so that we can talk about it next time. Okay? Kids, I'm sorry that this one was so long. It's almost 15 minutes long, and I don't like to do them this way, but this is an important concept. So I will see you in a few days, and go back and look at this over and over and over again to be sure you absolutely understand it. Bye-bye.